The best stories in days like this are the ones where it feels like a stranger is sharing something with you, making the reader feel like they're almost spying into someone's memory. Brian McHugh's story, The Day After the Music Died, is an evocative example of that. The descriptions of the Glasgow tenements and the people who lived there. As a reader, you're brought into the author's day vividly, and you share his initial ambivalence to, and then realisation of, the events around him.
To the casual onlooker, one tenement looks very much like another. To a 10-year-old, each block is a different country, a different world, each with a different terrain. Some are in friendly territory, some are in the hands of the enemy. Some have a shop frontage indicating high back courts. Some are entered at ground level, some entered in a lower level still, the basement, the dungeon, or the dunny. Each unique back court had its walls to be climbed, its chasms to be leaped, and its middens to be raked. My own back court in Gorbals Cross was particularly blessed. It had a high back court overlooked by the gigantic red brick remains of an abandoned brewery. The back court in its turn overlooked a ground entry tenement containing a particularly slimy, leprous but fascinating dunny, a more living proof of social stratification I've yet to come across. Those in the high backs were, in comparative terms, affluent, a mixture of Jews and Irish Catholics who worked in one of two industries, namely upholstery and the building trade, and who, give or take the odd mix-up over special holidays and their peculiar dietary requirements, mixed freely and easily with each other. However, particular opium was reserved for that underclass that lived in the dunny. Mrs. Rosenberg, that unique ethnic creature, an Irish Jew, bemoaned that they neither worked nor wanted. My mother, on the other hand, who lived and worked in America, took a more liberal view. They were, poor souls, she would announce, merely feckless. Saturday was the highlight of the week. My father worked on Saturday mornings and always banked up the coal fire before he left at 7 o'clock. The kitchen was always warm and cosy when we were up and about. My first task on awakening was to check that I'd left my picture money, enough money for a toffee bar and admission to the local flea pit cinema. One of these Saturdays stands out clearly and vividly to this day. It was the Saturday after Buddy Holly died in February 1959. Not that I had any particular interest or affection for Buddy Holly. After all, I was only a boy and far too busy for all that. I read it in the paper, heard about it on the wireless, even saw it briefly on my auntie's TV. It was on the news, just after the Lone Ranger and before the Buccaneers. In an age before half-crazed pop adulation, his death passed almost without comment. That Saturday morning was as bright a winter sunlit day as I can remember. The crisp early morning light flooded our back court and lit up the brewery building like a medieval keep, its massive shadow casting the dunny into an even more black melancholy pit. But hey, what did I care? This morning I was free to do anything, go anywhere, and in the afternoon even better. The matinee movie at the Palace Picture House was Earth versus Mars. After a breakfast of a mug of tea and homemade soda bread covered with fresh rhubarb jam, I trotted happily downstairs to the quiet, chilly and sunny back court. It was 10 o'clock and I enjoyed the moment, for I knew within an hour that the back court would be busy as hell, with kids playing, women hanging out washing, men reading papers, people hanging out windows, shouting, racket, noise. I had a tennis ball, well, what once was a tennis ball, that I could play with alone for a while, until that is someone else appeared and demanded a shot, or suggested at least a more communal game, like football or rounders. I was playing catchball against the brewery wall when I heard a loud scratching noise from the dunny. I turned and walked across the back court, covering my eyes from the bright sunlight, to the iron railings that stopped the unwary from falling into the dark dunny below. I put my face against the railings, a hand on each side, and peered across the 20-foot chasm that separated the two tenements. A window was open and the fluttering, ragged remnants of a curtain pulled to one side. A young man, I had little concept of age at that time, anyone older than me or went to the big school was a man in my eyes, was standing gazing out of the window. Suddenly the loudest noise I thought possible exploded from the window. It was Buddy Holly singing, "That'll Be the Day." That'll be the day when I die. I can still remember the look in that young man's face. He was smoking a cigarette and looking straight at me, but he didn't see me. He looked in a state of sad but bewildered ecstasy. The music was blaring from a brand new Dansette portable record player. As the music finished, there was activity and commotion in the further recesses of the room. I could make out a young woman and two small semi-clad children scurrying about. Suddenly the window closed and the same song put on again, this time at a lower volume. But there was more noise, kids wailing, arguing, someone crying. I was aware of a shout behind me. It was young Dennis, my pal from the next close, shouting me over for a game of football. Before I left the railings, I became suddenly aware of what my mother meant. My mother, or any other acquaintance, would no sooner buy something as trivial as a record player than he would a grand piano for the back room. Yet this young man had gone out that morning and bought a brand new record player simply to play one song. I often wonder how he felt in those moments when he opened his window to play his song to the world. Did he feel feckless, or did he feel free?
That someday, well, I'll be blue, well, that'll be the day when you say goodbye, yes, that'll be the day when you make me cry.